There's a certain part of Jesus' main message that gets left out of a lot of modern Christian preaching. That, of course, is the kingdom of God. Hey guys, welcome back to Kingdom Craft, where I work on building a church spreading the kingdom of God in Minecraft while I talk about things relating to Christianity. And specifically today I'm talking about the kingdom of God. So, look, if you read the Gospels, especially the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, read about what Jesus talked about. He spends a lot of time talking about the kingdom of God. That was his main teaching. And a lot of us, even modern Christians, when they read the Bible, they think that's sort of synonymous with heaven, like where we go when we die. We go to the kingdom of heaven when we die. By the way, the Gospel of Matthew calls it the kingdom of heaven. The Gospel of Luke calls it the kingdom of God. They're the same thing. It's just translated differently because Jesus was probably speaking Aramaic and the Gospels were translating it into Greek. It means the same thing, and most people, except for some weirdos, say that, yeah, they're the same thing. That's not what's being debated. What is being debated is what exactly the kingdom of God refers to. So there's the traditional Christian interpretation, which of course I think is the right one, and there's like a more modern idea of what it is, which I think is wrong. So the traditional Christian interpretation of the kingdom of God is something that started right after Jesus rose from the dead and ascended into heaven. So basically we're living in the kingdom of God now. It's what theologians have called the already not yet. In a sense, we are already in the kingdom of God right now. It's not something that we go to when we die. It's not something we have to wait until Jesus comes back to be in. So that there's an already aspect. There's also a not yet aspect, because clearly there's still evil in the world, and that won't be completely resolved until Jesus comes back. But being in the kingdom of God means spreading the kingdom of God and doing Jesus' work by fighting evil in the world and making a better world here and now in anticipation of when Jesus will come back. So there are 7 points of what I'd like to outline as kingdom theology. It's not specific to any denomination. It's just trying to recenter Christian belief on what the church has traditionally taught and what's kind of been forgotten. So the first point is what I've already kind of gone over, that the kingdom of God was central to Jesus's preaching and should be central to ours. So yeah, like some people think that the kingdom of God is just sort of like a metaphor for heaven, but that's not, that it doesn't say that anywhere. It's pretty clear if you read the context. Jesus said, like, the kingdom of God is among you right now. And yeah, so it was central to Jesus' teaching and should be central to ours. The second thesis is that I already went over that too, is that it's here and now in the already not yet. And it's our job to advance it. So I do not believe that we can fully usher in the kingdom, so to speak, because the evil will not be fully banished from this world until Jesus comes back. That's obvious. But the church has an absolute calling to make the world better, not just so that we can, like, save souls, although that is part of it, but so that we can just improve the material conditions of people here and now. So, at least among Protestants, there's kind of been an unhealthy split. Some churches, like the more liberal mainline Protestants, care only about helping people's physical needs, like, you know, helping the poor, advocating for justice, but they don't care about saving souls and converting people to Christianity. And on the other hand, you have the more conservative evangelical churches that care a lot about saving souls and converting people to Christianity, but they don't care as much about helping the poor and doing justice here and now. And clearly in the early church did both, and they did not separate the two. Both were part of spreading the kingdom of God. So, of course, someone joins the kingdom of God by being a Christian. So spreading the kingdom of God, of course, means spreading Christianity, preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, that Jesus died for our sins and rose again and ascended into heaven. The early church never was shy of doing that the way most mainline Protestant churches are these days. However, the early church never separated tending to people's spiritual needs from tending to people's physical needs. They healed the sick, they fed the poor, and, the early apostles had, supernatural healing gifts. But even the Christians who didn't, who came later, like during pandemics, during the early Roman, the early church in the Roman Empire, Christians got famous for being the only ones who were willing to risk their safety to help people. So yeah, we advance the kingdom by tending to both people's physical and spiritual needs. The third thesis is that the sacraments, meaning baptism and Holy Communion, are relevant to the kingdom. Someone becomes a citizen of the kingdom through baptism. Baptism is not simply a symbol. I mean, that's a bit something that denominations will agree on, but I'm going to say that the denominations will disagree on this. But I'm going to say that baptism is an objective entrance into the kingdom of God. And Holy Communion, I think everyone can agree on this, is participation in the kingdom of God. And the fourth one, this one might get some people mad, but I'm going to say it. I do not, you'll notice that more traditional churches simply look better and the music sounds better than contemporary churches. Compare a traditional, Catholic cathedral to a modern megachurch. It's obvious which one looks better. And that's because traditionally churches thought that the church is a colony of heaven here on earth, and that its architecture and music should reflect that. So I think, traditional church music and traditional church architecture is objectively better than contemporary church music and contemporary church architecture. I think Bach is way better than Hillsong. I don't think you can really dispute that. So, yeah, part of kingdom theology for me means promoting the idea that the style of a church, its architecture and its worship style, are not mere personal preferences. There's a certain style that reflects the idea the church is the kingdom of heaven here on earth, and there's a certain style of church that simply does not reflect that. So, all throughout the Bible, God connects earthly realities to spiritual realities. So the church is an earthly reality that is connected to the spiritual reality of the kingdom of God. So that's very important. Another thing is that the fifth thesis is we should work for the unity of God's kingdom by centralizing the lowercase c Catholic faith. When I say Catholic, I don't mean Roman Catholic. The word Catholic by itself just means universal. That's why the Catholic Church calls itself the Universal Church, because they believe they're the one true church. But the word Catholic in and of itself just means universal. So the Catholic faith is the stuff that all Christians agree on. By all Christians, I mean all historical Christians. So that it excludes, theological liberals, it excludes Mormons, it excludes Jehovah's Witnesses, but it includes, Protestants, Catholics, Eastern Orthodox, Presbyterian, Baptist, Lutheran, Methodist, whatever, Anglican, Oriental Orthodox. Most historic branches of Christianity agree on what the early church agreed on. And the early church, while they disagreed on a lot of things, they wrote a few statements, specifically the Apostles' Creed and the Nicene Creed, debatably the Athanasian Creed. Those were the things that they agreed on. And I think we need to insist that what we Christians agree on is more important than what we disagree on. We may disagree on baptism, we may disagree on exactly how salvation works, we may disagree on, like I said, church style, we may disagree on church government, but what we all agree on is the Trinity. What we all agree on is the nature of Christ. He's truly human, truly God. We all agree that he was born to the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, dead, and buried, descended into hell, rose again from the dead, ascended into heaven, and is coming again to judge the living and the dead. So that's what we all agree on, and I think we should make that more important than the things we disagree on. The sixth thesis is that because we're citizens of the kingdom, we need to be set apart in our personal lives. Now, this is something that no one would disagree with, but I think I'm offering a slightly different way of presenting it than a lot of people do. So all Christians have this idea. All Christians would generally agree that, if you're a Christian, you should be good, generally speaking. You should have good morals. And different Christians will disagree on exactly what good morals are. There's a question over, like, what are the best sexual ethics. There's a disagreement over a lot of things, like how strict you need to be with certain things you do. But generally, the commandment to the Israelites in the Old Testament, the book of Leviticus, that God gave them was, be holy for I am holy. And holy means set apart. So Christians need to be set apart because we're citizens of the kingdom. And we must reject the things of sort of the kingdom of darkness. So, for example, this is going to be very controversial. I'm just going to say it. Certain symbols that I'm not saying out loud, but certain symbols are clearly opposed to God's kingdom. And if Christians are set apart, they should not be displaying those symbols. Also, certain things people tend to put in their bios in the modern, especially in these past few years, that's sort of a sign of being against the kingdom of God. So if Christians are to be set apart, we have to be people who don't do those things. And the last thesis is something I kind of already touched on, but doing acts of justice and mercy and helping the poor is not simply a way to, convince people to be Christian. It's not simply a way to save souls. It's a way of proclaiming the realm of God here on earth. So yeah, that's about it for the kingdom of God. It's something that is, I think, central to the gospel, and I think all Christians should, regardless of denomination, should basically get on board. So yeah, I've covered all the basics of Christianity while building the floor of my church. In my next group of videos, I'm going to be talking about specifically what my branch of Christianity, Presbyterians, believe. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you then. Bye.